name is Paul Rowland. I'm the moderator. I am going to try and moderate this esteemed panel and some conversation afterwards. We have a diverse and experienced panel, and there are a number of you. So I'm going to ask panelists to be succinct with their comments, and we'll try to get back to everybody at least for a second time. Um, so, as I said, some of the ground rules are just make sure that you're muted if you're not speaking, and uh, to turn off your camera if you're not speaking, so that we can have a little bit bigger focus on the speakers. Um, I'm going to go first. First of all, I think this event is really designed to have a conversation about what happened at COP, and what's going to come out of it, and how much of that was a result of the formal process and how much of that was a result of everything that goes on the sidelines that we want to really bring into the mainstream of the conversation and the climate conversation and climate action. And we have a number of speakers who will be able to speak to that and what COPx does and is and hopes to be. But I think we've all seen with the last few COPs that they've been either hosted by petrostates or been very sort of fossil, I won't say captured, but fossil influenced. And this one, to the point, I think there could be no finer metaphor for the situation around the international intergovernmental conversation about climate than the fact that the venue caught fire. As as we probably all saw, I just recently came back from the Pacific Northwest and to the snowy wonderland that you see behind me, and experienced some of the atmospheric river that they're having there. So between fires and floods, I think we can all dispense with the notion that climate change is a hoax. I think climate change is very much with us. It's not coming, it's here. And so um, the the conversation has become much more urgent, but there are good things happening out there, and that's what we're here to discuss today. I wanted to lead off by asking a veteran of the conferences of parties going back to the 90s, 3 decades of experience, and almost every COP, Hunter Lovins, to give us a quick overview of how she saw this COP, and then I'm going to move to somebody who is a more recent attendee. So, Hunter, can you kick us off, please?
Paul, thank you. And thanks to all of you for joining us. In many ways, I think there is no more important conversation. Figuring out as a world how it is that we are going to grapple with climate change really is the determination of whether the human race gets to hang around. Save the earth. The earth will be fine. It's humans who are in trouble. And we felt that at COP. it the temperature was above the wet bulb temperature that's considered to be survivable at several points. We were in the Oceans Pavilion giving a panel, and it was 120 degrees in the room with essentially 100% humidity. No wonder the darn place caught on fire. Everybody was plugging every manner of cooling device they could lay hands on, like swamp coolers. And swamp coolers, of course, don't work at 100% humidity. So, and all they do is just add to the heat. As Paul said, that's the pin from COP3. That was Kyoto. We actually got something done at Kyoto. And on the other side is the pin from now COP30. This is 30 years. Did we achieve anything? And I must admit, I go to COPs knowing we're not going to achieve anything. Somehow this one felt different. Maybe it was President Lula saying, this will be the COP of action. This is the COP of implementation. This is the people's COP. At their hearts, COPs are about two things. Will the world act to limit the ravages of the climate catastrophe? Short answer, no. We did nothing to help in that. And two, will the rich countries pony up the money to help the poorer countries deal with the ravages of the climate crisis? And one of the so-called outcomes of this COP was a tripling of the commitment of the rich countries to the poorer countries to help them adapt, except that we pushed it back to 2035. So, short answer, not yet. People who believe that it's worth having these meetings because they keep alive the dream of multilateralism. There was an agreement. The agreement was reached in the middle of the night without all of the nations there, in violation of the commitment of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, that all decisions will be unanimous. Because of that so-called commitment to unanimity, what this means is you have screaming matches at 3 in the morning amongst sleep-deprived delegates arguing over commas and brackets. Now, why would anybody fly thousands of miles, stay in strange accommodations for 2 weeks to argue over commas and brackets? Because of the 101 verbs that resulted in text, 69 of them are not active, which is to say, no action is required. This is what they're arguing over. And it's why, after 30 years, the cops have delivered no real action. There are some things that came out of it. We have been arguing. I work with a group called Now Partners, and I think Marijn will talk more about this in a bit. We've been arguing for non-negotiated solutions, that the reason to bring the world together is not to argue over commas, but to talk about real things that real people can and will do. And we did get a couple of agreements out of that. Because the COP was in the Amazon, Brazil committed to greater land tenure for indigenous people. Now, that had been in the works well before the COP, but I think because the COP was there, the country was willing to agree to that. There were two sort of consolation prizes, an agreement to have an accelerator program. I'm not quite sure what we're accelerating, if not the solution to the climate crisis, which was not mentioned. There was no mention of phasing out fossil fuels. And the commitment to increase funding. But again, not yet. So why go to these things? Brazil said when it became apparent there would be no real agreement that they are going now to create roadmaps to end deforestation and to end the use of fossil fuels. To me, the most interesting thing that came out of all of this was in the very last plenary, when we're into extra innings, because cops always go to extra innings, a gallant woman from the nation of Colombia stood up and spoke about how this was a travesty and Colombia had not agreed to this text and they would not agree to it. This threw the whole place into a turmoil because, as I said, these things have to be unanimous. And then the Saudis and the Russians cornered the COP president, Dolago, and said, you gavelled this in the middle of the night. It's a done deal. So Colombia and the Netherlands said, all right, then, this April, we will hold a conference on phasing out fossil fuels. So if you really want action out of the COP, let's go to Colombia in April. Back to you, Paul.
Thanks, Hunter. That's a great, succinct kind of summary. I wanted to turn to somebody who went to their first COP this year, not their 30th. Mike, can you turn your camera on?
The camera's on. Can you see me?
Uh, oh yeah, there you are. Okay, I see there's two of you. Um, so
Yeah.
Mike, I'm going to ask you to frame what it was like for somebody who's fresh and new into the COP process. But first, get just if you could introduce yourself and where you're from and why you were
Sure.
there.
So I'm Mike Komersky. I'm the executive director of the Pace Energy and Climate Center, which is a climate and energy research center founded by Congressman Dick Ottinger, located at Elizabeth Hobb School of Law at Pace University, which is the number one environmental law program in the United States. I have been in this position for about 7 months, and I was fortunate to attend COP, as Paul said, it was my first COP. So I'm viewing it more as a participant from civil society, right? What benefit is there for folks like me to allocate, money from our budget, which could otherwise be used to help students or actually, look at the issues we claim to be solving? Like, is it worth it for folks like me to go to COPs? Um, I would say maybe 51% worth it, you know. I was taken aback by sort of the spectacle of the whole thing, right? It was a trade show or I was fortunate enough to be in Abu Dhabi the month before uh for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature World Congress. It wouldn't have been out of place as a mall in Dubai. Um, a trade show of national propaganda and broken promises. Um, but I'm not gonna lie and say it wasn't exhilarating and exciting, but so is a casino. Um, so once you kind of get past the spectacle of it all, you have to sort of take a step back and think about why you're there. While I'm not above, free wine from Portugal or free beer from Singapore, right? I was there for a mission, right? I was there to meet like-minded individuals, like-minded organizations who I could help advance their mission, right? People who are swimming in the same direction as us, who care about the same things, who care about phasing out fossil fuel. So it is easy to get distracted as to why you're there and get dejected by the lack of sort of national action and sort of the burdens of unanimity that Hunter alluded to. But like so many things having to do with the climate crisis, I find it helps to focus on what aspects you're in control of, right? I can't control what Saudi Arabia and Russia are going to do to the UNFCCC process, right? I can control um, devoting my energy and my funds and my capacity to finding like-minded individuals to fight the fight that needs to be fought, right? To seeking to phase out fossil fuels. So we were fortunate to finalize a partnership with the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is the organization that is having the conference in Colombia that Hunter alluded to, right? We were fortunate to advance conversations with other global organizations that, quite frankly, we wouldn't have been in the same room with if not for COP. That said, it is quite silly that we have to wait for one day a year. And I loved Belém for all the talk going into it about how difficult it was to get to and the logistical nightmare. That was great. I really had a wonderful time. But it was difficult to get to and it was expensive. And I'm fortunate because I'm at a research center in the global north, just outside of New York City, in one of literally the most wealthy suburbs in the world in Westchester County. But all of civil society is not as privileged as I am, right? So while I got the benefit of going to COP and being in the room with people who I can help and who can help me, who by proxy can help the mission here, not everyone is, right? So there's got to be a better way than, flying all over the world for, a week at a time and spending thousands of dollars when not everyone has that access, right? I don't know if I'm going to go to Turkey next year. I probably can, but is it worth it, right? Is the time commitment to get through all the pomp and circumstances and get past them all, and yeah, probably have some more free wine from Portugal. Is that all worth it for the, 20% of the time that I'm actually devoting to meeting like-minded partners, to doing the good work? And right now there's kind of not a better way. And if there is a better way, it's not accessible to all. So that's why I'm excited to be involved with COPx, and I'm sure we'll talk about how we're trying to craft a better way as a group, but this is not the most efficient way to make change.
Thanks, Mike. That was great. And I think the point that you made just now will go to another founder a little bit later in the conversation to explain exactly why COPX was put together. But I first want to go to Samuel de Carvalho, who's was at COPX and at COP, not COPX, but he and is Brazilian, a Brazilian lawyer, and also affiliated with Pace. Samuel, do you want to take it away for a few minutes?
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Samuel. I work with Mike at the PACE Energy and Climate Center. I'm the research fellow. I'm also SGD at PACE. So my takeaway from COP really comes from, I think, a local perspective. I'm actually from Belém, so I was able to witness every step of the city's preparation to this big event. And first of all, I just really want to say how COP left a historic legacy to the city. We have really totally changed landscape, new markets, new museums, parks, infrastructure. So in terms of like changing the city's landscape, it was really a wonderful, just wonderful thing to have COP at Balan. And the second thing, which I think is one of the most incredible, I've been to COP29 last year in Baku, and I've been to COP30, of course, in Balem, and I just could see the tremendous difference between public engagement. So at the Green Zone at COP30, it was totally full, to be honest. All the side events, the place itself, it was completely full. They had to limit people's access during peak times due to capacity limitations, and I didn't see that at COP29. So it's just like surprisingly, and I was so happy to see how the people from Balem really like, cared about what was being discussed at COP about climate change, and they really like want to be engaged in those discussions. And particularly one side event was so meaningful to me. I was presenting a panel with Mike, and we were explaining to the people, and it was like a side event. So we're not having the fancy lawyers that we have in the Blue Zone, but really like the local people. You would have people wearing shorts, like flip-flops, and our presentation was all about what COP was, because most people didn't really know what that event taking place this in their city was all about. So we really explained through all the like COPs and the UNFCCC historical process, how it started, what does it mean to Brazil and to their lives. And at the end of the panel was just so incredible because one lovely lady came out to me, hugged me, and she was like, "Oh, thank you so much for explaining to me what COP is about, like what this event taking place in my city is all about." And it's just so great to share a bit of what I've learned at Pace and with my work, and give it back to my people. And I think what that brings me to is what locals are expecting right now after COP. I think we have two big questions. The first one is what now? We had wonderful events, we had great panels and great connections. And I think what the people want to know, what are the next steps? How to ensure that COPx, PACE, Climate, Energy and Climate Center, and other organizations will continue the mission in the Amazon region. And the second question I think we all have as well is how can we be a part of it? COP really encourage people from BLM and civil society to be be a part of change, to really want to talk more about climate change and how we can find practical solutions to the region's problem, to the Amazon region's climate problems. And honestly, I think COPx can be one of the answers. So having this discussion right now and having COPx at in Bell Hunter, Merging, and everyone there who are part of COPx, I believe we all are, as Hunter always tell us, you are part of COPx, really brings out that to your people, to the people from Belém. You can also be a part of the change. And that's what we don't have in the blue zone and in climate negotiations sometimes. Even in Belém, we had so many riots and protests, indigenous people protests, because they didn't feel they were represented in the negotiations. So I think that's the space we really want to bring together people and talk about how we can find practical solutions to our problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Samuel. That's so important that you brought in, I think, some of the joy that people experienced, because from looking at it from afar, all you saw was the organs, and the official statements, and the negative stories that media always like to play with, and I think that those conversations that you had and that others had and that they got so much from were really important, and go to the heart of why COPx was formed. And to go to that, I want to bring in somebody who's intimately familiar with the intergovernmental aspect of COP, and who has, as one of the founders of COPx, can tell you why it's necessary for COPx to exist and to succeed. I think uh, um, Martin Frick, who was the UNCCC's senior director for a time, and again got to see the inner workings of it. And who I've had the pleasure of working with for the past 9 months on COPx. I wanted Martin to sort of give a frame in terms of how you got from the formal and to this informal that is really so much more active and vital. Martin, do you want to?
Well, thank you, Paul. And I was smiling because you got UNFCCC wrong, and you can get it wrong so easily. And I remember when I first came across this process in 2007, basically the grown-up said, you can't speak about climate change unless you understand the process. Fast forward in 2017, I was the senior director at UNFCC in the very heart of this process, and I can confess I still don't understand it because it's not there for being understood. It's there to be an arcane labyrinth of regulations, of committees and subcommittees that doesn't answer the simple question, what can we do to stop climate change? And for me, it was a heartbreak because I worked all my life on climate change. And when I was finally in the heart of the process, I thought I'm in a position now to really do something, only to see how little action there is possible. And it occurred to me that it's not about this negotiations or that COP or this COP committee. It is actually about the operating system. And the operating system is sovereign nation states talk to each other, unchanged since 1648, since the Peace of Westphalia. So, how on earth can we solve a 21st century problem with a 17th century operating system? Quite simply, we can't. Now we have all the solutions, we have everything that's needed, and it makes business sense. Renewable energy is simply cheaper. The cost of air pollution is way too high, and I haven't even mentioned the cost of climate change. And yet, we are staring at this COP process, this conference of parties, of state parties, of diplomats, as if it was the supreme truth that's bringing to mankind what is needed to fight the crisis. What we want to do is COPx, which stands for Conferences of People, and that's real people. These are the tiles I'm looking at on my laptop. And X simply stands for independently organized because nobody has to ask for permission to take climate action. No community wouldn't be able in a discussion to identify at least that much climate action. But most significantly, I'm firmly convinced that we have a majority of people worldwide who want climate action. And these people are silent because they are constantly megaphone down by the oil lobby, by an understanding that I'm alone and there's nothing I can do. So the whole idea, and I conclude with that, is simply to get regular people in their social context, wherever they are, to discuss what is climate doing in my community, what little steps can we do, and how can we step out and become visible. And the most important thing here is climate change actually is and should be the big unifier, because climate doesn't give a damn whether you're a conservative or a liberal, whether you live in the global south or in the global north. Just now, I texted with friends in Seattle suffering under an incredible flooding. So, wherever you are in the world, you are affected. And if there's anything that can bring us all together as mankind, then it's the care for our common planet, it's the care for a common future. Paul, back to you.
Thanks so much, Martin, for that great explanation of the inspiration for COPx and for really the purpose of why we're having these discussions. I'm going to move now. We're going to sort of move to more of the solutions and what was actually happening outside the government discussions. And I'm going to ask Marijn Dals, who is with the Future Food Institute and Weaving Labs, among others, to pop in with some remarks, and I'll give you 3 to 5 minutes if you can, Marijn.
Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for being here. I share everything that was said before about, you can see behind me three young girls, my three young daughters, and every time I decide whether or not to go to one of these circuses that is somewhere in the world, you wonder whether it's worth burning the carbon or not. Then on the other hand side, I, especially also with an eye on them, care quite a bit about this experiment called human life. And ultimately, the COP is an incomplete representation by all means. But in absence of something like COPx, it still is a circus that brings together a group of people that can have a positive influence for more than often up to 2 weeks in the same place. And so over the past few years, we have very much been focusing on what Hunter also referred to before, the non-negotiated outcomes. And what we've seen and what I've personally, coming from the food industry, have experienced is that food wasn't even on the agenda until we got to Glasgow. And now, 4 years later, it's omnipresent and it is uncontested. People are starting to see that food systems, as just one of the many examples, are actually integral to climate change. And they're equally integral, actually, also to social inequality. And within the food systems, we're actually recognizing that soil is a key indicator, which actually happens to connect us also to some of the other members of the so-called Rio Trio, the combat against desertification, and on the other hand side, against biodiversity loss. And so what I'm seeing over time is two things. I'm seeing that although in my opinion, way too slow, but we are growing the systemic understanding and the realization that this is a systemic challenge that we need to face. And what we're also seeing is as we're getting more and more disillusioned with the negotiated outcomes, the non-negotiated outcomes take a bigger spot. And some of these examples, for example, this year was Governor Gavin Newsom sharing the disclosure laws in California, showing that you do not need to unite the 198 national governments and the European Union, but you can actually also within your state or within your locality make a difference. And we've seen this moving by more and more tangible solutions coming together, in a way also combating the narrative that was just mentioned on global south versus global north, us versus them, where are our trillions, which are very dehumanized stories. And what we're seeing is there are more and more stories coming out and sharing and meeting each other of real tangible local solutions. For example, working with 1.2 million farmers transitioning into regenerative in India, then connecting these Indian farmers to the farmers in Egypt. Now having the Indian and Egyptian farmers working with Sri Lankan farmers, Zambian farmers, and then in Brazil, bringing that also to the Amazon, to the Brazilian farmers. And so little by little, all of this is creating a movement of a possible future, not just the dystopian future, but the protopian future. However, we cannot do that just 2 weeks a year, or if you would count Bonn on top of it, maybe 3 weeks a year. This has to happen everywhere, every day. Most people care deeply, deeply about climate change. Many people are willing to even give up some of their income for it. Yet they also feel that they're the only ones that feel as such. And so they feel insignificant. And if we do not come together to help people overcome that sense of insignificance, then we cannot unleash the biggest power in our fight against climate change, which is each and every one of us. So that's why I still go until COPx becomes the new normal. Back to you, Paul.
Many thanks, Marijn. I think the non-negotiated solutions, again, are really the reason why COPx is here, and where we hope that that all of you who are on this call can take things going forward. So, I'd like to bring in Rushank Bardolia from Green Earth Agra in Ghana at this point. If you're able to join the conversation, Rushank.
Yes.
And if
Thank
you
you
could
for
just
having me on
introduce
this.
yourself a bit better than I did, that'd be
Yes.
great.
Thank you for having me on this call. So I'm Rush. I'm originally from India, but a citizen of Luxembourg. I used to be a banker for over a decade. Then I left all of that and I moved to Ghana to do regenerative agriculture. And now we grow food for um, communities in Africa. And I started this journey because I do believe that uh, uh, hunger is a huge problem in this world, and food system contributes to 33% of the emission approximately. But there is no action in that direction. So I started working on doing regenerative agriculture in Ghana. That's a bit about me, but I would like to bring few. Like first of all, I agree with everything the panelist had to say, and I this was my fourth COP. I started in Egypt, and now I was in Belém, and I have seen, and I like the word which Marianne uses. It's circus, but at the same time, I have learned a lot in at COP. I had an opportunity to be a part of the Ghanaian delegation, which we were negotiating, and then I had a chance to also be a part of civil society. So I've seen from both sides. So there are a couple of ground reality. I'm not as uh, like Martin said, I'm one of those regular people who want to be a part of this, action. Uh, I hear people talking about millions, billions, and trillions. I'm on the ground. I see zero. Even like you can put it into fossil fuel, um, like migration from that, and you can talk about giving it to indigenous society. But on the ground, I see zero action. How I see from COP, I got to meet wonderful people like Hunter, Martin, Marian, and then after I finish the COP, I get a chance to interact with them, and I then bring that action onto the ground in Ghana. And I didn't know anything about regenerative agriculture until I met Hunter in Egypt. After I met Hunter, I learned from her. I spoke to her on maybe uh, on regular basis. So I brought that action to the ground. So I like putting it in a way saying that COP is for 2 weeks, COPx is for 365 days. So we need to do things. As in, I do not like if there are conferences of parties and if I want action in March, what do I do? Wait until November to do something I need? So this is a platform where people like me get an opportunity to talk to people who potentially would have solutions for the problems which are on the ground. And this is where I believe that civil society needs to be included. Like uh, like I am privileged to have an opportunity to go to COP. Does do other farmers in Ghana or other developing countries have that opportunity? And I really believe that there's a lot of points at COP where people want to be on the panels list, put them on LinkedIn, have the whole social media presence, but it doesn't actually translate directly onto the ground. When I need something on the ground, I need to call my contacts after COP. And this is where I believe that having a structure of something like conferences of people where I can talk, communicate, connect with different people, I can have faster and better solutions, not from top down but bottom up. If I speak to farmers in Tanzania and like farmers in Egypt or India, they know the problems of the farmers. So I don't have to be with the politician who has never been on a farm and get the solutions from them and discussing commas and brackets. I will know what is the problem. Like in last, I don't know about COP what has changed in last 4 years, but I can say on the ground in last 4 years the patterns of rains and patterns of heat have changed drastically. And this is the same thing a farmer in Tanzania or Egypt will know. So this is what for me COPEX brings, having solutions from people who actually face the problem rather than people who are looking to be elected again and again. So this is why I like coming to COP and then continuing it through COPEX. It's a ground reality which I wanted to share.
Thanks, Rush. I really
Back to you.
appreciate that. And I think we all appreciate the fact that you're on the ground doing something, and regenerative agriculture is one of the solutions that we do talk about a lot at COPX. But I also wanted to, compliment our panelists on their contributions and highlight that that's one of the reasons that I'm I'm a member of COPEX, and why we support it is because every time we have these conversations, I come away feeling better, and I feel like there are solutions there, and that we can reach them if we can work together to achieve them, rather than just the gloom and doom and feeling helpless, which I think we all feel also occasionally. And so this is a way for us to not feel helpless through action. I wanted to take to open it up now to comments or questions from um, our participants who've joined us, and I thank you all. We're now up at 56. And I wanted to see if any of you had something to contribute. I'm going to ask you to be brief in either your comment or your question, who you want to direct the question to, or if you just want to comment, that's also great. Just be mindful of the fact that we have about 15 minutes left, and we want to give you all your time back. So I'm going to see who's if you can put up your hand.
Carl's up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. Then go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. It's just a huge pleasure to be part of that community here. I'm new, so some of you know me from LinkedIn probably, but most of you don't know me yet. So I just want to give you a brief kind of, new concept. We all agree that the progress isn't the way we would like to have it. And I would give this the formulation, politics just failed. Yeah, that's just what it is. And failure is not the issue as long as you reflect on the failure and you find a new way. And the new way I'm proposing here is let's just go one step further and uh, let's have a decision in COP31 would be the best to go for a first global official direct democratic vote on climate action. That's what I'm proposing. Um, Today, 5.5 billion people are connected to the internet. So that's the
Okay.
good news. We have got the technology. Let's go for that. Thank you.
Carl, by the way, the guy in Australia who was doing a similar sort of thing is Julian Cribb. Molly Harris Olson was also part of that. And if you need, I can put you together with them.
This must be my hands, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Hunter, for that. I'm going to go to Jessica next, and then Katie Fettis.
Oh, yes, this is Diane Tim.
So if you could introduce
You
yourself
and-
quickly, and then
How much for the county? I think
Hi, I'm Jessica Wade, and I'm in New York City, and I was a student of Hunter Levin's about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. It's great to hear an update at what happened to COPx, and I'm just wondering if there was any opportunity during COPx, since it was located in the Amazon with that focus for leaders that were attending COPx to actually learn from indigenous in the field in the Amazon.
Some. Marine and I both work with a group called Now Partners. One of the things we do at these COPs is to put on evening dialogues. And at each of these evening dialogues, we had Indigenous people, interestingly, from around the world. We had Indigenous from the Amazon, we had from Australia, we had from the United States. And in fact, I've got a picture that I labeled Cowboy and Indians of Rush from India, and then a woman from the Amazon and a Aboriginal from Australia, all hugging each other. We nowhere near enough. Marine went out to a landless farmers settlement. And Marine, you might want to talk a bit about that and what you learned there. We also will be working with people in the north of Brazil. Marine and I are now building what's being called a farmers MBA. It's anything but an MBA. Jess, you'll know what a real MBA is. We are doing little short 2-minute videos on things like what is a market, what are prices, how do you do value added, along with little AI comic strips so that people for whom the written word is not their way of learning will be able to get this. And we'll be working with a number of the organizations in the north of Brazil trying to get this content on regenerative agriculture, on what they can do to be part of the climate solution out to northern Brazil. As an aside, our great communications gal figured out how to use AI Marine and I are recorded, so you have our picture. And she then, with AI, translates it into Portuguese. So I'm sitting there with the voice that you're hearing now, speaking Portuguese. It's like, this is very cool.
Thanks, Hunter. That's a great aside.
Marine, you want to talk a bit about your trip out to the landless farmers settlement?
Certainly, we went into the Amazon forest, of course, not as deep as I would have hoped given time, but with the Minister of Family Farming and Rural Development, Minister Paula Teixeira. And what is always, I would say that's not just here, that's true anywhere, but what's always important in building these movements is literally having your feet in the clay or in the soil and understanding what's going on the ground. And again, why I deeply believe in COPx is because you could see that the conversations around protecting these lands became tangible when you saw how land was being cleared. The moment the local peoples, the indigenous, no longer had a living and any opportunity to stay within the forest, they leave and the bulldozers almost instantly follow, clear it, and put soy up. So their protection is very much coming from them being on their lands, but to be on those lands, they need an income. So we need to make sure that being in those forests is worth more while the forest is standing than when you chop it down. On the other hand side, because I went with the MSD, the Landless Farmer movement, I also experienced firsthand that simply um, telling people that they can no longer use any inputs, which is true for MST farmers, but then not connecting them to the knowledge that you need to have to actually build successful syntropic agroforestry systems means that they're now dependent on drip irrigation. They're actually going to have very low yields. Some of the products that normally were actually providing them a livelihood are failing. And so, again, this is where we really need to connect people. We need to make sure that people in their local environment who know best what they need can also get access to people that have already figured this out elsewhere. I've been on many syntropic agroforestry systems, and with the knowledge that they have deep in the Amazon, there is no need for irrigation. There is no need to lose these crops. So tying that together is really, really important. Um,
That's
yeah.
great, Mariah. Thank you so much. And I know that Katie's going to have something interesting to say on that topic as well. I just wanted to squeeze in Martin to respond to something that Carl had mentioned earlier. Sorry, I'm not quick enough on the uptake here.
Thank you, Paul. I need 20 seconds. Carl, this is a fantastic proposal, but I'm heartbroken to tell you it will never fly in a formal COP process because the capacity that as a state representative, you are the only actor who can act, and the fact that in a COP, 99% of those participating are sentenced to be only observers stands in the way of that. But the spirit of what you're saying is exactly what we are trying to do with COPx and say, forget about all these rules and regulations. Let's go directly to people and have them empowered. And yes, the number you mentioned, 5.5 billion people with digital access, that's my biggest hope. So thanks for that.
May
Thanks.
I just quickly respond to that?
Can I come back to you in a few? Can I come back to you in a couple of minutes, Carl?
Sure.
Before we end, I promise I'll come back. Katie, you've been waiting patiently. Please go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everyone. This is Katie in Canada. And so this global majority of at least 5.5 billion as we all work together on creating new alternatives of the future. How can we also make sure that that energy is disruptive to the dominant operating system that Martin points out is failing? And what kinds of maybe structures or scaled up or replicated structure can we build through COPx and other platforms to make the local work more visible, to others in working in other localities around the world.
Excellent questions. Join us in COPx and help us do that.
And
Uh,
Katie, if I can add to that, I think one of the biggest problems the environmental movement has that we are so fragmented. There are 10,000s of little organizations, of groups here, of associations there. Look at the most successful societal movement, whether you like it or not, but the LGBTQ movement has been fantastically successful because they had a common identity, a common flag, a common logo. And we believe A, this is needed, and B, you can only get there if it's a no ego thing, if it's not brought to you by this NGO or by that association, but it's taken up by the people, by regular folks because it is needed. And that is what we are trying to provide.
Thanks, Martin. I'm going to go to Maria next, and then we'll bounce back to Carl before we wrap up. Maria, I think you're not, there's no sound. Maria is,
How about now?
yeah, that's better. Yep,
All
thanks.
right. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. This is wonderful. And I just wanted to point out COPx, how important it is meeting the times where we're at. I'm the author of The Leadership We Need, a brighter or a new mindset for a brighter future. And this is really about changing our mindset. We are trained and in our grained kind of mindset to look for leaders outside of ourselves. We need to change that and come together and find the leader within us. I cannot stress this enough. In these times when we're dealing with extreme complexity, rapid change, and so much uncertainty, we really need to look inward to find our inner author, if you will. And I couldn't think of a better place to come together and share ideas and solutions and truly be the leaders that we can be and have a platform like COPx to bring this together. We are really strong and we can change the world. Just want to point that out.
Thanks, Maria. That's a great note on which to almost close, but I want to go back, as I promised, to Carl to respond to the response.
Yeah, thanks, fantastic. And Maria, you gave me the best speech I could have wished for, because that's what we are working towards, is also towards strong leadership, bold, strong leadership. And Christoph, we are not at all interested in COP, because COP just failed. We want to approach the UN General Assembly. Yeah, we think we need the decision for a first global direct democratic vote in the UN General Assembly. Yeah, that's the process we're working towards, and that's just my response to that, Christoph. Many thanks. Appreciate. Hey, fantastic talk here.
Thanks, Carl. We're now at time. I don't know if any of our panelists had a quick wrap-up word that they wanted to throw in. I think Hunter does. And then I have a couple of closing thoughts, but Hunter, go ahead.
I want to read a piece that Fiona Harvey of the Guardian wrote. What matters in the climate crisis is not the legal status of words agreed over night-long sessions in windowless conference rooms. What will save us is real-world action. If enough countries display their intent to move away from fossil fuels, money will follow. Today, global investment in renewables is twice that of fossil fuels. A quarter of all new vehicles sold worldwide are electric, and half of the power generating capacity in China and India is low carbon. Look outside, she said. Hear the thunder, feel the rain. In the real world, change is happening.
Hunter, thank you for for bringing those words in at our close. I also want to thank all of our panelists. We had a lot of people as panelists on this on this call, and that was because we had a specific topic of the COP that was framing that, and we had a lot of voices. We wanted to bring in more, but of course, there's a limited amount of time. But that brings me to, we'd like to have these conversations regularly. I think we'll do another one in January, and I'm encouraging all of you who are on this call, if you haven't already, if somebody could drop the join link into the chat at this point. I think it's already been there, but let's put it right where people can click on it. Please join, and then we can contact you about the next event. And I think we need to continue this conversation. It was great to get participants to chime in. So hopefully we can structure the next one so we leave more time for that. But this is a great start. I think having this right sort of in the month after the COP, and the COP flop, as we might say, but there was successes on the sidelines, and we really want to bring those sideline successes into the mainstream and into the center of things. So thank you on behalf of COPx and on behalf of the whole team and all of us. I want to thank all of you for joining today.
Paul, thank you so much for moderating. Thanks to all, and join us.
Thank you.
Together, we can build a climate-safe future.
Appreciating everyone's candor, and that means a lot in a space like this and at a time like this. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
There. Put your face up there. Thanks, everyone.
Look at, I'm disappearing. Tom is